sound and sensible legislation. If it is passed tonight, my Select Committee will give it the attention and the intelligent examination that it deserves.
Andrew Little.
Mr Speaker, as my colleague Charles Chauvel has noted, that Labor will support this bill, but we will support it because it needs examination. Because, as other speakers have said, the holy writ, almost, of habeas corpus is very important. It goes back to the Magna Carta. Those were feudal days. The National Party will be familiar with them because that is their underlying, those are their underlying values, those are their underlying precepts. They understand feudalism, but what it is important about, and everybody in the EPMU was delivered up on request, I can tell you that. It is very important, a very important protection of liberty and freedom. And on this side of the House, we value it and we treasure it. And this writ, it's not a matter of statute, it is part of the inherent jurisdiction of the High Court, a court of inherent jurisdiction. And it is not something that should be lightly interfered with. And it is not appropriate in my view, Mr Speaker, to justify changes to this important institution, the institution of the writ of habeas corpus, on the grounds of greater efficiency. Now, the better public services mantra that we hear all the time might be good for the cost cutters, the accountants and the bean counters, but this is a question of individual liberty and individual freedom. And although we can do some things better procedurally when it comes to habeas corpus, when it comes to the oversight that the High Court has to preserve and protect freedom and protect citizens from unlawful detention, we should be very careful about the erosions of those principles, the priority principle, and the requirement for the body to be delivered up in an appropriate time frame. It is entirely appropriate that the court be given guidance that where clearly the detention is lawful and the application is frivolous or otherwise not meritorious, that there should be some scope to dismiss it without the Crown having to defend the detention. I want to say, in my researches about recent applications for habeas corpus, the House might be interested to know that the most recent application in the Commonwealth jurisdiction was in the High Court of Bombay in the last day or so, and it related to the delivery up of a cow. And of course that's in a context in which the bovine species are very important to them, and some chap had lost his cow, had his cow detained last November and wanted it delivered up. The habeas corpus application was the only way he could think of to do it. Now the cow, sadly, had passed away some months ago and was not capable of being delivered up, except perhaps as a set of steaks. I want to say this though, what is very important, part of the examination of this legislation will coincide with the examination of another Select Committee and another piece of legislation that is a government bill, and that is the Immigration Amendment Act. And that is a hideous piece of legislation, and it is the total erosion of liberty and freedom. There could not be a greater erosion of it. And it is interesting because Mr Okenvold, the sponsor of this private member's bill that purports to preserve and enhance habeas corpus, is a government member presiding over a bill that will do precisely the opposite when it comes to the destitute persons who turn up on borders, on our border, applying for refugee status. Because that piece of legislation will do the opposite of habeas corpus. It will allow the Crown to detain unfortunate persons who turn up on our border for up to 6 months without having any say on any application to detain them, with limited scope for judicial review, limited scope for judicial oversight. And so we should examine that legislation as against this private member's bill to preserve and protect and enhance habeas corpus. And I just hope that this House, as these two bills move through the House now, will look at these two pieces of legislation and will look askance at Mr Okenvold and at the members opposite and ask, how can it be that a party, the great party of freedom and enterprise as it purports to be, will allow mass detention for up to 6 months without recourse to appeal, and also then say that it supports habeas corpus? The two do not stand together.
David Clendon.
Speaker, kia ora koutou.
Mr Speaker, the point's been made already.